Welcome everybody to Too Legit to Crit, a tabletop role-playing podcast made for people who prioritize high fashion flavor text over actual survival stats.
You can have both, actually.
You can.
It just depends on the system.
Mm.
And how much trauma you're willing to take.
It all boils down to trauma with you.
Let's there's reasons for that.
Let's not pick that apart.
Well, it falls under the same line as, everyone puts at least one of their kinks into a character.
I've not. Anyway,
you haven't played enough systems where it's relevant.
That is very true. So, my name is Juan Santana, and joining me, as always, are my wonderful co-hosts, Zoop and Misfit. If you like what we do and you want to see more of us, then don't hesitate to like and subscribe. That helps keep the lights on, and it helps us carry on doing what we're doing. How's everybody?
Good. Tired. I'm going to nap after this, to be honest with you.
Can I say, I love the jacket you're wearing.
Chaos the back is the best part.
Is it on the back as well? Oh,
very good.
Yes.
I got it at PAX.
I am a fan of
It's one of my PAX spoils, and it's phenomenal. To be fair, I saw Jenna Daggers wearing one. And I was like, where the fuck did you get that? And she was like, I got it in the vendor hall. And I was like, I'm going to go get one tomorrow. And I did.
That is very Jenna Daggers coded.
I do love it. I am a big fan. I'm actually Googling it now to see if they sell them anywhere else.
It was an independent artist, and I don't remember the name of them, to be fair. So sorry. Terrible.
I will try find them. Don't worry. I've got a whole show to find them. Don't worry. If you see me doing that, you're
just casually scrolling. It's fine.
I'm just casually let's have a look at what it looks like. Okay, there's a bomb involved. Okay, but anyway. So what have you been? Have you been up to anything like lately in terms of the games that we all
light
enjoy?
Week for games. All I had this week for games was my Fallout game, and I can honestly say so I have this problem, y'all. Maybe you can help me with this. I have this problem.
We can certainly try.
I build characters with every intent of them being a background character. I don't mean just a rando NPC, but more like they're not the face of the party. They're not. Yeah. They're not the leader. They're not the person people turn to for answers. And I have this problem where I tend to, even though I build these characters to be not the face, and I don't like that term, but I don't know how else to explain it. And they end up kind of being the decision maker, the go-to person, the default, oh, well, what do you think we should do? And I don't know how to not do that.
Could be something to talk about in the future.
I don't know how to just actually play it. And stat wise, I even built Sam. I normally do not dump stat charisma because I am a very charismatic person. And it's hard. That's one of those things that's really hard for me to tone down. And I think that's the problem that I keep running into is I'm not playing to my actual physical stats.
Well, I love dump statting charisma.
Really?
Because
I don't.
Well, so the reason being is because one thing I realized, so this is specifically in D&D, is that, you can, if somebody with low charisma can play a high charisma character, I think that a person with high charisma can play a low charisma character because the person who is playing low charisma, or the person who has low charisma but is playing high charisma, it just happens to be that however they're talking is received positively. So they're going to do their best, and then like the characters based on the roles receive it positively or not. And so I can still, if I play a low charisma character, I can still be myself, I can still be charismatic. That doesn't mean that the NPCs are going to receive it that way.
That's fair.
And so you know that I don't mind playing low charisma characters, because I mean, and the same thing like with, I mean, with intelligence, it's a little bit, I do have to, when I'm playing a low intelligence character, like be very like, I'm going to keep this thought to myself. I'm going to keep this thought to myself. I'm going to keep this thought to myself. Or I will.
That's what you do in side chat.
Yeah. Or I will like, you know, I will put it on a napkin and slide it over to somebody else to like be the one to say it. But yeah, I think.
So as a high intelligent person, you find it difficult to play sort of low in characters?
No, because I just like keep the reason that I have trouble, the one thing that I do have trouble with when playing low int characters is determining what is low intelligence. Because like I don't consider myself high intelligence. Like that is something that other people put on to me. I don't consider myself high intelligence. So I don't necessarily know, okay, where is like, what would I know and not know at a quote unquote lower intelligence? Because everybody, even people who are quote unquote lower intelligence, have things that they are intelligent about. So it's important to me to like, you know, choose one or two things that they're intelligent about. And I just like, I try to like keep in mind, like I met a lady who hated capybaras because they were giant rodents and thought that if you jumped on the moon you would float away. And I like try to keep that in mind, that there are like different levels of knowledge, of like scientific knowledge, of other kinds of knowledge. And the other thing I think that like we run into a lot, I think as TTRPG players, we generally have an interest in certain things, in fantasy, in sci-fi, in HP Lovecraft, like Cthulhian stuff. So it takes meeting somebody where you go, like I was wearing a Cthulhu shirt that had a cat with Cthulhu, and I forget, it was somebody who I would call, you know, like high intelligence, and they were like, what is that? And I was like, it's a cat, but it's Cthulhu. And they're like, what's Cthulhu? And I was like,
See,
like from HP Lovecraft. And they were like, I don't know who that is. And I was like, huh. So, you know, there are types of knowledge that we take for granted as TTRPG players that I think that people just don't always have.
I guess that brings up a really good point of, so for me, I view intelligence as like academics, how well one would do on like a test or going through school or higher education. And so like that's how I always think of an intelligence stat, which is where like I think of perception is how well you perceive the world around you and how well you can interpret what's happening and like where your mind immediately goes to. So like let's say for example there's two people loitering around a car. A naive person or a non-world person would probably be like, that's their car. Yeah. That's whatever. They're not doing anything shady, when in reality, they might be trying to break into that car. Where someone with high perception and like high wisdom per se would be like, this seems a little shisty. What's going on here?
Right.
I think I think a lot of this, the issues with this, stems from the birth of this hobby, and the biggest proponent of this hobby sort of pigeonholes these stats.
Yeah.
So a lot of it does kind of boil down to what your own interpretation is.
Yeah.
For example, I don't necessarily think that someone with low charisma can't be the face of the party, but they may be quite open, they may be quite eager and in a sense like charismatic, but they may always say the wrong thing.
Right.
For
Yeah,
example,
like-
so you can be quite, you can take the lead, you can be there, but doesn't necessarily mean that you have the ability to do so. And in terms of intelligence, for me, I think the one of the changes that I liked the most in Pathfinder 2nd Edition is they stopped calling them knowledge checks. They started calling them recall knowledge checks.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's a really good distinction.
So
Yeah.
just because you have a low intelligence score, but you could have a high knowledge in a certain topic, and when you roll, it's not rolling to see if you know something. It's rolling to see if you recall that information.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really
that's
good.
like VTM has a thing called specialties.
Mm.
So like for example, my character Ophelia, she has 2 specialties under the same stat or same thing, which is etiquette. So she has 2 different specialties in it. She has Elysium, which is like the club and like vampire club night and whatnot. So, and it's basically just how do you navigate nightlife.
Mm.
And then she has another specialty, which is backstage, because she is a performer, and knowing your way around backstage and having to deal with all of the backstage things and like walking around in the backstage of a set and et cetera and et cetera.
Yeah.
She has a specialty in that as well.
I think part of the reason of like my experience of the word like or like what is considered to be intelligent is, I will admit, so being labeled as like a highly intelligent person, I think it's really easy to become really snooty about it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So part of, I think, balancing intelligence with empathy is this like really distinct work that I've done to like make sure that I recognize other people's intelligence, that even when it's not academic, because academic is not all types of intelligence. So that's why for me, like when I hear like the intelligence stat, I don't just like talk about academics, but like I try to think of it as like more of an interest in academics rather than like raw intellect. Because I don't want to like demean anybody's intelligence.
Yeah.
Like that is not my hope at all. So like when I think of like when I talk about like a low intelligence person, I really am talking about like being drawn to those academic things or not. And if you're not, like you still have other areas that like you are really smart at. Like some people are just like incredibly creative, and like I can't draw, like I can barely draw a circle, and there's people who make like lifelike paintings that are just like incredible. And like to me that's intelligence. Yeah.
Oh my art. I can't do that. Yes, I would agree. I guess it is important when you're building a character to understand what those stats mean mechanically, because some GMs are really sticky about it, and then what they mean personally to you. And how do you interpret like strength? How do you interpret perception? How do you interpret intelligence or charisma? Like all of those things are really important for you also to think about. And I would venture to say if you're kind of like me and I have a pretty weird view on a lot of these stats, mainly because like unfortunately there is a base level of meta that I bring into it because I've just been role playing for so long, and it's kind of hard to like dump that, you know. I do tend to talk to my GMs and my storytellers about like, okay, what does this stat mean to you? How do you perceive it? How do I perceive it? I just want to make sure that like I'm on the same lines, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
I think it just kind of fuels my sort of disdain for your traditional D20 systems.
That's fair.
Because
like
I
we
don't,
even have those stats in BTM.
But I don't necessarily like the way that they are tied into the skills you possess in those systems.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I much rather a system like Delta Green where you have your stats, but the skills are independent.
Yes.
Because-
So VTM is more like that. Like you have your your actual trait stats, and then you have your skills.
Whereas
very different.
Because, for example, you can let's take the example of rock climbing. You know, you can excel at rock climbing, but you can excel in multiple ways. You can excel by being physically strong, but you can also excel by being incredibly intelligent by figuring out the best way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so having the skill separate from the stat, either separate or do it like Savage Worlds where they're not inherently tied unless you want to surpass your intelligence. Because the way Savage Worlds does it, it ties a skill to a stat, but that connection doesn't affect your roll. It only affects if you've got a D6 in athletics and you want to bump a skill that's attached to athletics higher than that, then it costs double because you're exceeding your natural ability.
The other thing that I think about is like if someone is high curiosity or low curiosity, like because I think that there are people who, you know, are like always like, why, where, huh, who, and then there are people who are just like, yeah, that's cool, I hear what you're saying, and so, and then also like putting two and two together. And so there are definitely times where when I play a character who it's just not, so I play a character who she has a lot of trauma in her past. She did not prioritize school, she prioritized partying, and things like that, and she's only like 18. And so there are times when I play her, and I mean, luckily this is a home game, but there are times that I play her where I will ask something and then I will start saying something and I'll stop and be like, no, she wouldn't ask that. No, like
that
she was captured by one of the big bads. She was captured by one of the big bads, and they were like, you know, asking her about a teammate, and they were like, you know, how does your teammate do blah blah blah, and she's like, I don't know, and like they asked like more and more questions, and she never thought to ask, why are you asking this? What do you want from him? Instead, she was like, wow, you seem like really into him. I think he's a little too young for you. And also, I don't know why you would be attracted to him. Just because that's like where her brain goes. And at the end of it, like when she got away from him and she went back to the character and was like telling him, oh, she was asking this, this, and this, he started explaining it to her, and she was like, I think I do better for you when I don't know what's going on.
Mhm.
Like, maybe don't tell me all your secrets, because I will say them out loud, and that's probably better that I just don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is interesting. Especially again when you have these sort of attributes. Charisma's always the one that gets me. I've not done it yet, but I am very much. I intend to, in a future game I'm running, to kind of not really allow charisma checks in any way, shape, or form. If you want to,
Mm.
if you want to persuade me, persuade me. If you want to bluff me, bluff me, and I will roll as the NPC to see how they respond to that.
Oh, I have such
Because
a hard time with that.
because you've always got the okay. So I rolled really high on my thingy check. That means your NPC believes me. It's like no,
Mhm.
no, it doesn't. So I would rather you wanna convince this NPC of something. Let's hear your argument,
Mhm.
and just leave it at that. And then as the NPC, kind of make the roll and just kind of if I need to decide because if it is a really good argument, I'll just kind of go yeah they believe you. Why not?
That's usually my issue is like um I will come up with a pretty convincing like argument or lie or something of that nature, and like even though I'm not playing a character that's statted to think like that, and like that's me as a role player, um and like that is something that I have to work on, being like, oh wait, no, my character actually wouldn't, though they wouldn't. And that's what I'm running into with Sam, is like Sam wouldn't.
Hmm.
And I tend to be like a very forward role player, so like I just vomit the thing out of my head. Like there was a moment where we were dealing with a glowing ghoul, and immediately my character was like, "Oh, I'm a ghoul. I can handle radiation. The two other fleshy creatures cannot." And then there is a robot in our party, a Mr. Handy. And I was like, "Okay, well, Mr. Handy and I, let's go deal with this because like this will kill them." And
Hmm.
it made sense for the character, but I said it before it made sense to me as to why my character would be saying these things.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I completely just I advocate for, even if you blurt something out saying, "Wait a second, no, that's not what my character would do." And like,
Hmm.
or like, again, putting it on a napkin and giving it to somebody else who
Mhm.
it's really their bag. Like
Mhm.
that's what they would be like, "Psst, I think this, above table," and like, go for it.
Side chat. I love a
So
good side chat.
So last week we discussed tips on how to kind of improve role playing as your own characters and what sort of things that you could kind of consider in order to kind of create much more fleshed out and interesting and intriguing role play. So this week I want to talk about how we encourage role play at the table. Not necessarily thinking about our own characters, but thinking about everybody else's characters, whether it is as a GM or whether it is as a fellow player.
One of my favorite things is that, well, okay, it helped me get confident, is in high school when I was in D&D club. Yeah, that was me. I've been a nerd forever. Anyway, our GM at the time would give us like the floor. So if we did something cool, like if our character did something cool, they would give us the floor and be like, okay, how does your character describe what it looks like, or describe how this action flows, or how this scene flows. So there was a moment where my character used a whip to jump on the back of a dragon. which doesn't sound great. It was a really dumb decision, and there was that moment of my GM being like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I was like, "Yep, sure am." A little like 15-year-old proud me. Well, was, of course, I was playing like an edgy little rogue, jumping on the back of a dragon. What? Who does that? And they were like,
seems perfectly reasonable to me.
they set up the scene of, okay, the dragon whips its head around and you're holding onto your whip. Now you're in the air. What else are you doing? And I was like, okay, well, if I can in the air, I would like to pull out my daggers. So when I land, if I'm not landing on its back, I can at least like stab and try to stop my fall. And just simple things like that are what gave me the confidence to start, when I was given a scene, to start taking the scene and doing more with it and giving little flourishes of, oh, as they're flying through the air, their long raven hair gets wrapped up in their face, which is totally possible.
Yeah.
And I think, from a GM's perspective, if you're trying to encourage your characters to do that, giving them the floor is one of the best ways, in my opinion, and in my experience.
Yeah, I would agree, and I try to do that as much as possible, and I will try sort of, because some people come into this, they're less inclined to immediately roleplay, so I am selective with my spotlight. If I know somebody is struggling a bit more, as long as I'm not making them uncomfortable, it'll be okay. And then what? And then what? And you might have to coax them out of it. You might have to kind of bring them out of their shell a tiny bit. But a lot of times people don't roleplay because they get overshadowed.
Yeah, it's the yes and through a situation. And now before I took a formal improv class, I used to get really frustrated when people said yes and it. And I'm like, what the does that mean? What does that actually mean, though? So yes anding is an important thing to learn. And for me, it's, yes, this happens, and now you add. And that was, when it was explained to me that way, it clicked immediately. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense.
I think as a GM, there are certain questions that you can ask. Like you can say, okay, like, what do you do in this moment? You can say, what do you say in this moment? What are you thinking in this moment? Like, what are you remembering? Just like any of the questions that allow the person to like really think about their character. And then as a player, I forget what it was. It was like in some game recently, and I was like, and how does your character feel about what you've just done or something like that? And like at the end of the game, they were like, oh, thank you for like, giving me that opening to think about it. And it becomes second nature. It becomes second nature to like elevate your fellow players. And yeah, you just got to practice, but also you got to know, is that something the person wants?
Yeah, there are people out there who would rather play TTRPGs more like a video game where they want to be led through the story. And like those players are valid. They're still having fun, but their focus is definitely not role play, it's mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you think system is partly responsible for that?
Sometimes I think the people who want to be led through stories more like a video game tend to lean towards the D20 systems, something that's a little bit like crunchier that they can tangibly hold on to and be like,
Yeah.
the rules as written or this as written is blah blah blah.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. The systems that are very much the rule book says.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, before anyone wants to like kick off, yes, but our table we don't. Yeah, I don't care about. I'm talking about the system as designed is
Mm-hmm.
to accommodate for every scenario. And yet,
Mm-hmm.
while I appreciate that not everybody plays D&D that way, when I'm buying a knife, I don't buy the knife based on its ability to open a tin of paint. You know,
You're a specialty person.
if I want to, and D&D and Pathfinder is very much call and response.
Yes.
If I do this, then this happens.
And
I
now
think
that's not to say it's not you can't have good roleplay moments in those
no, of
systems,
course not.
but they definitely lend themselves more to that call and response, to the here's the rule, here's the role, here is the result.
Yeah. And the sort of, I mean, a lot of times I say, you know, in Pathfinder, the GM's superfluous. He cannot be there. You give the players an AP, you give the players a stat block, and you just kind of go, yeah, they go knock yourselves out, and they'll have the same result. But that's just me griping. But at the same time, there is an element of, I believe, there's an element of truth to that, where people who kind of are more on the video game side of things, they like to be able to make a combination of actions that work.
Mm-hmm. It's the every little thing make my number go up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, if
And,
I
like,
add this and there's nothing wrong with that. It is a
Nothing
type
wrong
of
with that.
gaming. It is a type of playing. Personally, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. It's not my
but,
jam.
But it is. But so, do you think that the sort of mechanics infused roleplay is kind of down to those systems? Do you think that kind of spreads it out elsewhere?
No, I definitely think it's player by player case. So like, for example, I recently played a game of Starfinder. And when I say recently, I mean like almost 3 weeks ago. It was a little home game. I really wanted a friend of mine to experience the system because I fucking adore Starfinder and nothing will ever change my mind about that. And I was playing one of the newer Starfinder 2e backgrounds, which is Prismani. And there are people, they can be of any ancestry, but they got stuck in the drift during the drift crisis. And once the drift crisis was over and they were spat back out at whatever time, wherever, they have physically been altered. So all Prismani kind of have like this internal glow to them. They all have this like luminescence quality. They get really cool like feats and whatnot. So like a higher end Prismani can teleport up to 30 feet, which is really cool because they are imbued with the drift.
Yeah.
And I was playing an ancestry called the Pacha, which are little cat people. And I was specifically playing the ancestry background for Pacha, which is a city kitty. And they were a little naked, hairless cat. But their internal glow made it so you could see their organs. This is not rules as written. This is player flavor.
Yeah.
And so, but like without those little background things, I would never have come up with that sort of flavor. So I think it really is determined by the person who's playing those crunchier systems. Because I do believe that there is a beautiful blend of like you can have your crunch and go by rules as written while still adding your flavor to it and your thoughts to it and like how it works with you.
I think the thing that happens is if you bring someone who is not comfortable with role play into a role play heavier system, my fear is like depending on the person, they might just shut down.
I see that a lot. It happens it happens in VTM. So VTM is this weird blend of, and most of the storyteller systems, like most of the World of Darkness stuff is like this, where like it's actually when you're building your character, because character creation is so in depth, there's a lot of mechanics behind it. So like there's a lot of I want to stack blah 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 to give me a 7 dice pool.
Yeah.
And as that feels good, and you succeed your roles and whatnot, it's those people tend to be like, I did it. Storyteller, tell me what happens. And they don't take the scene. They don't add any of their own to it. They wait for the storyteller to tell them exactly what happens. And it does feel a little awkward being at a table with people like that as like a hardcore role player where I'm like, no, you just set it up for me and I'll take that. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And I do think that they tend to, in the greater scheme of the game, fall into the background, but where in the moments where mechanics matter, they shine.
Yeah.
And I do also think that that is a good thing to have those people at the table. And it is up to our roleplay heavier people to bring them into scenes.
One thing I've started doing as a player as opposed to as a GM is I've been treating speaking in character as the default as opposed to the exception.
Mm-hmm.
So everything I say, if I turn to one of the party members and I say something, it's in character. It's, do you know this? Do you it is a character moment. And I've found that people respond to that. If I want to speak outside of character, I will go right out of character, and I'll say whatever I need to do. But 9 times out of 10, I will turn to the person, and if I want to call them a fucking idiot, it's because it's my character calling them a fucking idiot.
That's so fair.
Yeah, and I've found it took at least certain people at my table, the table I play at, it took them a session to kind of go, I don't think he likes me, and the GM's going, no, he is in character for the majority of the session.
I think that's a good thing, a good thing to point out, because I personally don't approach games like that. One of my storytellers does. So there was a moment where my character was being interrogated at gunpoint, and my storyteller was like, so what do you do? And I was like, cry. And I said it as a joke. I was like, I need to make a joke out of character to like get myself to get the nerves out, because like I'm playing a character who's got like really high will and like who's been through some shit and who's kind of used to this. So like, no, they wouldn't cry. But my storyteller was like, okay, roll to see if you hold back your tears. And I was like, and it made for such a good moment, but I personally was not fucking ready for it. I was not ready at all.
But I do think an element of that is good. I think, because you do kind of push people ever so slightly out of a comfort zone when you kind of go, like, they might make a joke, or they might make a badly timed joke against the big bad who can wipe them off the face of the planet, and you react as the big bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it can give them that shock of, oh shit, what have I said? Which is a perfectly natural thing. Christ, I know, I've done it more than once when I've said the wrong thing and gone, for fuck's sake, why did I say that? But having the players put into that situation, I think, does go a long way to kind of helping with roleplay. And I'm not to say be the gotcha type of GM, but every now and again, and make it unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a perfect little tool that you can use.
Yeah, like, my storyteller had never done anything like that to me before. I was not prepared. I was not ready. It was good. It was really good. And like, followed up, I've had a character where they've tested the big bad. The big bad was like, oh, if you take another step, I'm gonna shoot you. And my character was like, let me test that. And like wobbled forward and got shot. I didn't think he was going to do it. I really didn't. I was like, my character and me, neither of us thought I was going to get shot. I was like, nah, he's bluffing. That's a bluff. I'm taking that as a bluff. No, it was not a bluff. It was not a fucking bluff. Got shot. But I think there is a point where at a table, you will very quickly find the people who are there for roleplay and people who are there for mechanics. And I will say it is very important for the people who are there for roleplay to make sure that the people who are there for mechanics don't fall into the background.
Yeah. Definitely. The spotlight has to be shared.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's what they want. So there are I forget which version of D&D. I think maybe the 5.5, now that's what they're calling it, did say something about there are some players that are watchers, quote unquote watchers.
Yeah.
And like is really more there to enjoy. Like maybe they should just watch an AP or two, but they're really there to enjoy watching their friends do stuff. So it really comes down to, if you're the GM, really sussing out each of your players' play styles, whether it's you ask them, point blank, or you notice how they are in session, and meet your player where they're at. This is especially true in home games. Don't force your players to become something that they're not. And you can always check in and say, is this something that you would like to develop? And if they do want to develop it, they'll tell you that. If they're like, no, I think it's going pretty well. Like, that's what it is.
One thing I will ask, because both of you are very much in the AP space. Do you? And this is something I'm only asking because I found it in my own personal experience. Do you think the lack of being sat around a physical table provides difficulties when it comes to roleplay? Because what I found was in one of the home games I'm part of, we got into the habit of not sitting around the table. We were sat like just in the living room, just kind of sat around. But I found a lot of times doing I turn to this character and say this, I found it to be somewhat immersion breaking. Whereas the moment we sat around the table, the role play element got so elevated because that wouldn't be a part of it. I would literally turn to the person next to me and go, this.
The borderline LARP.
Well, so I would say the way to combat that is to learn the other characters' names, not the players, the characters, so that you are when you're quote unquote turning, like you can, like literally I'm looking at the camera, I can turn a little bit and be like, Abigail, what do you think? Like, or Crispy Taco, what are your feelings on this thing?
Mm-hmm.
I now want to create a character called Crispy Taco.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, okay. So I play at a variety of different tables, right? And like all of them are digital tables. They're all virtual tables. I unfortunately do not have an in-person game at the moment, and it kind of sucks. I miss it a lot. I will always take opportunities to play in-person games if I can, which is why I love, PAX U so much, because like I take time at least once a day to play an in-person game because I'm so starved for it in my everyday life. But with that being said, I'm at tables where we use camera, like we'll just have cameras on. And I'm at tables where we don't use camera. And the table where we don't use cameras, I will honestly say, role plays so much harder than my table that does use cameras. We go so much harder. And I haven't been able to figure it out yet. And I think what it is when there is no camera and you are having to say, let's, for example, Aster turns to Crow and has a whole conversation with Crow. We have to describe everything we're doing. Everything. And that having to describe everything that you're doing and how you're saying it and your facial expressions and your body mannerisms forces you to go to a level, even with cameras, that you don't have to go to. So like at my table where we have cameras, like, yeah, we still role play pretty fucking hard. I'm not saying that. I am saying that there is a level of having cameras where we can, physically look into that person's like little box and like you'll see my hands flying around. So I won't talk about my, gesturing wildly and like dramatically. Those will just happen because the other person can see them. So I won't talk about it.
I suppose then that could also,
but that could be a me thing.
Down. But I mean, because we like one of my tables we ran online and we ran it without cameras, and I found that a lot of people, they were so sort of focused on what the character was doing while they were saying something that it kind of took away from the overall message. So when we put cameras on, I found that lessened, because obviously you're not using your bandwidth to kind of describe the scene or describe how you're acting. You are just essentially acting it. And I found it far richer and probably less dramatic, because you don't describe it as much. You just happen to do it. But I found the role play a bit more satisfying that way.
That's fair.
I think it depends that there's a huge difference between AP and home game in that way. Like in home game, I definitely can see that there is like an importance to the ease of like being able to see each other and just kind of dive into that. If we are recording for a podcast, it's important to like be able to tell the listener, like bring the listener in with that words of like what you're doing, how you're walking.
Yeah, the show that I record, Aster's Game, is the one that we don't use cameras for. It's just, and it is a podcast. So you do have to think about all those little details, and you do have to like allow people into the scene and make sure that like, and remember in the back of your head that these people can't see what you are doing. And that's why even like streamed games, are different than like podcast specifically. Like if I'm doing a stream game, I will do more silent mannerisms with somebody versus like describing that mannerism.
Yeah.
And like that flip flop back and forth. Like I definitely prefer podcasts now more than like stream games. It's a preference. Everyone has one. I know people who are like, no, I am a stream only kind of person. Let me be live. I need that like chat interaction. And like, no, that's great. I can't handle that. My brain is like freaks out, spasms, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, so I think on that, I think that is yet another sort of problem that we have solved.
Oh yeah,
I think
huge big problem.
We're just racking them up and we're just knocking them down. So we're going to bring this to an end. Zoop, do you want to give everyone a shout out and tell people who you are?
Yeah, I'm Zoop. My mom calls me Supriya. You can check me out on Zoop Machine everywhere, including my card that I never update. And follow Zoop Machine and also follow Convention Zero to find out about our virtual con that is happening at the same time as Gen Con.
All right, Misfit.
Hello, I am Misfit Playland, literally Misfit_Playland, all over the socials. Stay tuned. I got a lot of projects in the works and fixing to come out this year. And as always, check out Vampire with No Name. I am very proud of Aster. I'm very proud of that whole group, to be honest with you. I think we do a phenomenal job. Totally biased. I still think we do a phenomenal job.
Sorry.
I also play on the Old Ways in their Mage the Great Beyond game. Heather is awesome. She was just introduced recently, so her life is problematic.
Okay. So if you like what we do, like we said at the top of the show, give us a like, give us a subscribe. You want to get in touch with us, you can give me a shout on any of the socials at Natural One. I want to say thank you to both my co-hosts for joining me this evening. It's great to catch up with you guys. Also, a huge thank you to the Dungeon Maestro for the use of our theme tune, all that jazz. Go check out their stuff. They do amazing work. And most importantly of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who spent time out of their busy day, listen to us talk about tabletop role-playing games. Thank you very much. Good night.